Good morning, everyone. How are you today? I am Stephanie Van Bark. Welcome back to Just Talking Business. And I'm a small business owner. So we're going to get right to our show today. First of all, I'm in a different environment. I'm actually in a hotel in Tampa. It's freezing outside, but we were able to rig this up for today's show. I am going to welcome back Jermaine Jones. Hello, how are you today?
Hey, how's it going?
Who has been gracious enough to come back and join us again for a third time so we can talk once again about all of the ins and outs of small business ownership. Today's show is about innovation. But I will say we're going to backtrack a little bit and go back to Inception and talk about a couple of questions that we needed to filter out and finish. And we'll start with that hiring question we were just talking about before. We had someone in the audience that asked a question and you wanted to revisit that, and it's when is a good time to hire? And so when is a good time to hire?
Okay, so I would first say what a lot of small businesses don't understand is that they've already made a hire, which their first employee, which is themselves. So to answer the question, generally, it really depends on the business and the industry. But a generic answer that I can give will be the time to hire is kind of ideally when your salaries are about 15 to 20% of your gross revenues. That's a generic answer. But again, I will say it all depends on your business.
And you tapped on a good subject because I know I'm guilty of this as well. A lot of small business owners don't consider themselves hirees, so they will pay everyone else but not themselves. So can you speak a little bit to what type of income should a owner try to aspire to? I mean, I know there are going to be some missed payrolls for the owner, but what are there some theories in terms of thinking when it comes to the owner thinking of themselves when it comes to getting a salary?
I mean, it goes back to that 15 to 20%. I think as an owner, you need to practice that so that you could better understand your financial operation of the business from the very beginning.
Okay.
So you're at 15 to 20%. And there are times that, the owner, you may miss some pay periods. But if you start to practice fundamental, just business practices, it will, do you great favor later as the business grows.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about, I know you and I were talking about this, skill versus labor. I know I've spoken to and befriended some small business owners because, we all commiserate about, sometimes you want to hire employees with certain skills, but
Right.
that generally means they cost more money.
Sure.
That's both in looking at them as W-2 versus 1099 and their
Sure.
skill set. They've got a knowledge, you got to pay for that. Or should you get someone that might not be as skilled, but is cheaper? What are some of the schools of thoughts around making those decisions, especially when you come to certain businesses that require certain skills?
Sure. I always, one of my mentors many years ago, said this quote to me, and he said, "Jermaine, listen, always remember this." And that quote is, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from a strategic standpoint, you got to look at it like this. So you hire someone for the cheap. You're going to spend time training them to hopefully get them to where you need them to be productive for your business. So that time that you're training them has a cost, right? The other cost with that is the time that they're not being as productive as you need them to be for the business. So in essence, you've paid double, right? Versus hiring someone, at a premium that's where you need them to be productive for you in a short period of time, in a short turnaround time.
And is that a school of thought for someone that's in a startup mentality, might have some extra income that they may be, or extra money that they may be able to put into a salary? Is that really, is that sort of the school of thought that they should keep in mind, or especially when it comes to certain areas where they really need that skill set?
Well, I would say number one, if it's knowing what you don't know, right? If you know you don't know something, you need a certain skill set, and it's not going to be something that you need on a continuous basis. There's nothing wrong with getting outside help, 1099.
Okay.
Because it's not going to be. It might be it might be something that you use sparingly,
And
or maybe something that you use once.
Versus a W-2.
What was that?
Can you explain the difference between 1099 and W-2?
Okay, so when you have a W-2 employee, you're responsible for labor and burden, right? So labor is the salary that they get paid. Burden is all the other stuff that's associated with that: fuel tax, workers' comp, bond, retirement, medical insurance, and whatnot. Okay. 1099 employee, basically, well, I take that back, not 1099 employee, but a 1099 person is a subcontractor. They're independent. You pay them one flat rate. They're responsible for their burden.
Okay.
So you're not responsible for paying their taxes, paying into their retirement, paying their health care.
So a good idea would be that as you're sitting down looking at your personnel and what you need to kind of decide which one might fall under the 1099 and which one might be someone that you definitely need to put that kind of investment in. An accountant may be 1099. A craftsman that specializes in your industry may be W-2.
I think the number one thing that a lot of small business owners need to initially first do is develop some type of scope of work for this position or for this job. Let's say, hey, I need a specific thing done. What's the scope of work for this particular thing? And based on that scope of work, it tells you whether or not you need someone there full time, which means that you could explore the idea of having a W-2 employee, or figuring out a way to, for lack of a better word, finesse a person to do what you need them to do under a 1099, or if it's something that you can just get a service provider to fulfill for you at the moment.
Okay. So, okay, good. That is good information to know about hiring. Another Inception question that we didn't get to last week was, are my products and my services the right products and services at the right time, at the right price point vis-a-vis my target market? So, because we've gone into a whole big thing at the end of last week about your products, really understanding if your products are needed, relevant at the time. Now we're talking a little bit about the right price point. So if you'll share with us how to get to that.
Okay. So let's say someone, I think this is probably one of the most difficult conversations and understanding to gain with entrepreneurs, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs think, hey, if I have an Italian food restaurant, that my target market is everybody, right? And it's not, right? So oftentimes they would say, hey, I'm selling Italian food, my competitor is Olive Garden, right? And it's like, well, no, Olive Garden is not your competitor, because the product that you're serving, while it's Italian food, it's not on the quality level potentially as a Olive Garden, right? Or let's say it's above the quality of what Olive Garden sells. You're not going to sell an above quality Italian dish at the lower price point that Olive Garden sells its price point, right? So your target market, if your target market doesn't match, that $15 or let's say it's $25 pasta plate, right? If you're targeting a target market that wants to get the $8.95 plate at Olive Garden, and you're targeting that particular client, you're not going to make any money, because that client has been priced out of their price range. Yeah.
Well, are you looking at your small business, one brick and mortar location? Are you just looking at your immediate demographic?
So if you're one brick and mortar, you're looking at maybe a 3 to 5 mile radius around your business. You think just put yourself in the mind, just step outside of being an entrepreneur and think of yourself as a customer, right? How often have you traveled 10 miles on a regular basis to frequent a business? You
Right.
haven't.
Exactly.
You haven't. I mean,
Yeah.
you may have, yeah, you may have, but just think about it. How frequently have you traveled 5 miles outside of common frequent areas that you visit? Like if you go to work downtown, right, and you go to lunch, what's the probability that you're going to go 3 to 4 miles to lunch from your office downtown? You're not. You're going to find some local place around, the office. It's the same thing. Just imagine being home. How often have you traveled, 5 miles to go to any grocery store?
Right. Absolutely.
Or the mall, right? A place that you frequently go to. So a great majority of your customers will come within a 5-mile radius of your business.
And so just walking around, doing sort of a research around who's in that area is a best course of action for assessing who that might be.
Right. I mean, I would, always say, when we're dealing with clients, I always tell clients, let's do a viability study to see how viable this product or service that you're proposing to do is. And in doing so, by default, we're going to get a lot of information that will allow us to be more strategic in our approach.
Okay. So now let me ask another question. So, I'm delving all into this. So services, I've again been in a lot of workshops and they talk a lot about cost of goods. So, but services is just services. It's not a widget. So what would your advice be for a service provider who, how to really get to a strong price point? What are some of the things that a service provider should be considering?
So, when you're talking about being a service provider, it's all about perceived value, right? So we're all consumers as well.
Right.
And we all have a perception of what a service should cost based on who's giving us that service.
Right.
And as a service provider, you're leveraging your expertise and your experience to justify your price point. Right?
So it's less about, I need this amount of flour and this amount of sugar, and more about what's going on up in here and what you've been able to bring to bear.
So this is the thing, though. Every lawyer in America that have gone to an ABA accredited law school studied the same cases in law school, right?
Right.
So why when everybody graduate, everyone doesn't get paid the same?
Right.
Perception is reality. It's all about perceived value. So someone will say, hey, this person went to law school at University of Syracuse versus this person went to law school at Harvard. While they were in law school, at the same time, they studied the same case law. But when they graduated, you're saying, hey, I put a higher perceived value of the service that this law school graduate from Harvard has over this law school graduate from Syracuse, and they both passed the bar.
Exactly. And how do you overcome that? I mean, again, as a service provider, there's this perception out there that, based on either your education or how much people see you in the stratosphere, that you might be better equipped to do.
I would say what oftentimes happens with a lot of small business owners in regards to product and services, they don't understand the landscape and they're not strategic, right? So from a pricing standpoint, you got to initially come in at a price point that kind of matches the perception of your service or product. And as you build your brand and your product takes traction and you have some case studies or you have some customers that can vouch for the quality of your service and product, then you can raise your price. It's a gradual thing.
Okay.
So you just can't jump in business and say, hey, my competitor who's been in the industry for 100 years is charging X, so I'm going to charge X too because that's what the market yields. It's like, well, you do know they have brand recognition and they have service recognition and they have experience that you don't have.
Right. So okay, right. I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, that's reasonable enough, even though it's done all the time. I might want to say that, I just showed up yesterday and I now know what you know, but okay. Right. And I do find it sometimes, and I know I've had to learn in some cases, customers who have been trained. You have customers that have this perception. You're having to just have a legitimate conversation and say, I know you think you can get this done for this amount, and you can, but is it going to be the quality that you're looking for?
You have some customers that are extremely savvy, so they can talk to you about the service they need, and if they know more about the service than you, it's a problem.
Right. But for those that don't, and they think they do, that's where, and it's just a matter of you really being able to explain what value you bring to the table.
Right. But I mean, even in those instances where you have customers that think they know, so I'll give you a true example. So I had a customer, when I met with him, he states to me, hey, here's the problem. And my first question is always to kind of offset what you're saying, Stephanie. Mm-hmm. My question is always, what's the problem? They'll tell you what the problem is. What did you do to resolve the problem? Well, I did all these things. Mm-hmm. Did it work? No. So clearly what you thought was the problem wasn't the problem, right? Because you did things to resolve what you thought the problem was, and the problem still exists.
Right.
Without going through that, Stephanie, what you get is, I'll say, hey, we need to look at this and look at that. They'll say, well, I tried this and I tried that. That's not the problem. So that's why I always ask them to disarm them. Hey, what do you think the problem is?
Right.
What did you do prior to calling me to resolve this issue? Did it work? No. Okay. So it's a high probability that what you thought was the problem is nothing but a mere symptom of the real problem.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So now you've kind of set that up in the very beginning. Now I can really have a real conversation with you about what you really want and what we can achieve together.
Definitely.
Good strategy. So, okay, now we're on to innovation. We had to finish up Inception, but we had to go to innovation. Now, the question is, what are the options for scaling a business? And there are a couple of good points here. So I will start with, if you don't mind, I'm looking at the list provided, products and services, which is a great segue because we were just talking about products and services. Mm-hmm. How do you look at your products and services as a method by which to scale your business?
So when you're talking scale, you're more so talking about either, and I don't want to jump ahead. So I will say this, under product and services, we're going to talk about product or service focus that will allow you to become, that you can master to become the market leader. We're going to talk about new product and service development to allow you to expand market share. And we're going to talk about acquisition. So I wanted to list out those three things so that, just give you kind of like an idea where we're going. So the first thing that I listed out, products and service focus to make that you should master to become market share leader. So when you're thinking about innovation, right? More times than not, a lot of business owners jump into business and they're selling everything. Mm-hmm. They're providing every service, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Rule of thumb, quickest way to a mass market is through a niche. There is no successful business in the history of the world that initially sold everything that they're currently selling today. No way, right?
It's a little thought.
Right. So mastering one thing to become market share leader. Arguably, if we were to ask a great majority of Americans, right, who has the top chicken sandwich in fast food chains, restaurants, there's a high probability a lot of people will say Chick-fil-A.
Right. That's which I'm learning now that it's in my neighborhood.
A lot of people will say, hands down, Chick-fil-A has the best chicken sandwich going, mm-hmm. right? So let's look at that, right? So when we look at Chick-fil-A, what if you ever go to Chick-fil-A, their core product is chicken sandwich.
Right. Yep.
All they really sell is chicken. They've added additional chicken related products to the menu, but it's still chicken. You got the grilled chicken, you got the fried chicken, you got the chicken nuggets, you got the chicken salad.
Chicken wrap.
You got the chicken wrap.
Pretty good.
Right. So if you say, hey, who's the market share leader when it comes to chicken sandwiches in the fast food chain? a great majority of America would say, hey, it got to be Chick-fil-A, arguably. Because
So
some folks will,
no, go ahead.
because some folks may say now, hey, Popeyes, but it's arguably top two, I would say, fast food chain, best chicken sandwiches. Best chicken sandwich will be Chick-fil-A, right?
Right.
So service, right? When we talk about, becoming a master in a particular service to be market share leader. So Federal Express. Federal Express, Federal Express came after UPS, right? UPS started first and it had the ground delivery game under control. So when Federal Express started, they couldn't come in and say, hey, we're going to do that too and compete with UPS to be market share leader, on the ground. So what they did was they decided to become the master at next day delivery through the air.
Gotcha.
So while you had UPS delivering on ground, Federal Express decided, hey, we're going to become masters at delivering mail and packages the very next day, right? To give us a competitive advantage over UPS. So they became a master at next day delivery. Both do it now, but I'm just giving you how they both came into being.
So let me ask this question. Okay, so I'm a small business owner looking to scale, and as you mentioned, I think I can sell everything. I know I've been in several stores where you've got everything from hairs and line in the back and a billion things in front.
Right.
What's the checklist? How do you sit down and have a real coming to Jesus with yourself about what should I be focused on and how do I make that a part of the market share, where that I can set myself up as a leader of the market share in that space?
So this is where having financial mechanisms, controls in place helps, because you can look and see what you sell a lot of versus what you don't sell a lot of. You do the financial analysis of your operation. You go through your product and service inventory. You say, hey, I sell a lot of this. This accounts for, more than 25% of my revenue, right? I'm going to keep that in my portfolio. Everything that's less than, 25%, I'm going to get rid of it. What that does is that cuts expenses of, from you investing in things that's not really generating you a return and allows you to focus on those things that do. So after making that adjustment, then you could tour with the idea of saying, hey, what additional product could I add to, or service I could add to my product offering that's going to return me, that's going to, help generate, a certain return that's going to enrich my portfolio.
Okay. Because I know that's hard sometimes with people kind of doing a lot of everything, just trying to get the money in the door.
It's not that hard. What happens is a lot of folks are, suffer from poor planning.
Right.
Because this is the thing. You're from a product standpoint. You got a store. You got all this stuff in there. You don't sell any one thing well.
Right. Okay.
Right. So Ralph Lauren. His real name is Ralph Lapchick. But everybody knows him as Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren started his empire by selling neckties. So after he sold a bunch of neckties, he said, hey, what product can I add to complement necktie? And he started selling, the shirts, the dress shirts. Because you got the ties, you got the dress shirt. Hey, what product can I add to, khakis? So now you got khakis, dress shirts, and ties. And he expanded from there over years. He didn't start his business with all the products that you see now at a Ralph Lauren store.
I used to work retail in the men's department, so yes, that is one of the ones.
I used to work at Polo.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was
Polo,
I worked at Macy's, so on the men's floor. So yes, I watched as Ralph Lauren really grew,
expanded. Yeah.
It was very impressive, and now his daughter's doing candy. It's everywhere.
Yeah. So the next new products or service, because we're talking about really innovation. So new products or service development, to expand market share. So when we think about that, think about Mercedes when we're talking about new product or service to expand market share. Think about Mercedes. When Mercedes first started, they had one class of car.
Mhm.
That's all they sold, right? So as they grew, they figured, hey, you know what? We need to expand market share, and we need to develop different classes so that we can, expand our market share and, get more of the luxury car market share. Let's make it. So when you think about Mercedes, they have the C class, the E class, G class, and the S class, and they're all at different price points. And even within each class, you have certain models, right? So to grow market share in the luxury car market space, they developed all these classes.
Mhm.
And in doing so, they're saying, hey, you know what? You probably can't afford an S class. You probably can't afford G class or an E class,
Mhm.
but you can afford the C class.
Mhm.
So it gives you the luxury at a price point that you can afford,
Mhm.
but it doesn't dilute the brand because we have these other classes that are more prestigious.
Right. Right.
So it
I think.
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't dilute the brand, right? It doesn't say, hey, you got the school teacher, we show up to the school and the parking lot's full of S classes.
Right.
You're not going to see that, right? But you will see, a lot of, C classes and, and it's like, it's still a Benz, and, you still got the perception from the public that you got it going on, I guess,
Right.
but at the same time, we didn't dilute the brand. Think about, market expansion from a service standpoint. You got Saks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Saks, the shopping store,
Right.
and you have off Saks,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right. You have, you got Broadway, you got off Broadway.
Right.
So you're not diluting the brand, but when you go get something from Saks, you can still say, I got this from Saks.
Mm-hmm.
You can still say, I seen the Broadway play, right?
Right.
But it was off Broadway. But no one is saying, I've seen Hamilton off Broadway.
Right.
Folks say, I seen the Broadway play Hamilton, right? So,
okay. So that then but also taking into consideration the brand that you really tapped on, that is, how do we keep the brand associated, but not quite the cost, the affordability, so that it's available to every man, but the brand still stands.
Right. But when you're talking about scaling, it's about market share.
Mm-hmm.
It's about growing, right? That's really what it's about. At that point, the brand is somewhat established, and you've generated enough money to make a move, or to get your product at a price point to where you can put it in an off Saks and still, get back what you put on it, right? Get back what you put into it from a margin standpoint. Mm-hmm. So the another under the bullet point of products and services in regards to scaling is acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. So with acquisition, when you think about it, it's like, hey, this core business that I started, I made enough money to either do product development to go into a new market, or to simply buy into a new market, to grow market share. So think Facebook, right? Facebook had, from a social media standpoint, a nice percentage of the market share, mm-hmm. but they wanted to grow, because Facebook business model is making money off advertisement. Facebook basically sell exposure to companies and advertisers. Mm-hmm. That's what they sell. So to sell exposure, you need to grow in your market share to, get more exposure. So Facebook, has a bunch of people all over the world using it. So what they did was to grow in their market share because they needed more exposure to make more money advertising. What they do, they bought Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
They bought Instagram, right? Yeah. They bought WhatsApp.
Right.
And you see? Yeah. You see how that all works. Huh?
Did they buy Snapchat too?
I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not gonna. You think about Intuit, right? What did Intuit do? Intuit got TurboTax. Who they buy? QuickBooks.
Right.
They bought Mint, right? Because all those services go together. So you're talking about an increase in market share. So product, right? Because that was just a service. So product, you got Nike.
Right.
Nike purchased Converse, right?
Right. Right.
to grow that market share. You have, I think it was Adidas that bought Reebok,
Mm-hmm.
to increase that market share. So they scale. So just from a scalability standpoint, when it comes to products and services, we talk, becoming a master at a particular thing to become the market leader, to scale, your market, new product and service development to expand your market share. We talk, Saks and Broadway and the like, and then acquisition, Facebook buying Instagram and, that kind of thing.
So what kind of conversation do you think business owners should have with themselves? I'm always trying to get at, okay, I feel like I want to scale. Which avenues would be better for me to really consider? Because I would imagine new product development is a cost.
Yep.
What you're trying to develop.
True.
So, what are some of the coming to Jesus questions you need to ask yourself to say, is this not only the right time to make this move, but which of these arenas is the best way to go?
It goes back to financial control mechanisms, because you got to have some money either way. If you're going to do R&D, you need money. If you're going to do an acquisition,
you need money. Mm-hmm.
So it always goes back to the money. It always goes back to how profitable your core business is, and what kind of liquidity do you have, and leverage do you have, and cash flows do you have, to get a proper evaluation of the business. Because if you're talking about doing R&D, it's going to cost money. If you're talking about doing an acquisition, it's going to cost money. So what you may need is some outside financial help to do this.
Right.
But smart businesses, the quickest way to scaling is buying a business that's already established in the market, that's proven, that's viable, and that's healthy, that's already in the marketplace. That gives you that puts you a lot further ahead of the curve in your scaling efforts.
And start from the very beginning. And something yourself. Okay. So next point of scale: legally amend business and corporation structure. Yes. Yeah.
So actually, the last statement about need money ties right into this, right? So when you're thinking about scaling, it's usually a money play.
Okay.
It's usually a money play when you're scaling. The business is doing well, and you're like, hey, the business is doing great, and it has gone as far as I can take it financially, right? Skill wise and money wise. So you may entertain the idea of, if you need skill and money, you may entertain the idea of having a limited partnership. You may bring in someone that has a certain talent and some money, so they're not only a talent partner, they're an equity partner, right? So you guys have a limited partnership, and I'm going to talk about S Corp, like when I'm talking about limited partnership, and that was another point that we were going to talk about under this heading of legally amending business and corporation structure for scaling. So you can do a limited partnership, and you bring in someone that has talent and money, right? So they're equity partner, and they're also a talent partner, and you bring them in when you've gone as far as you can go, and you need that help and you need that skill, right? So you bring that person in, and what happens from a tax standpoint is, you guys would have to definitely do an S corporation paperwork to the federal government, to the Internal Revenue System, so that it tells them that, hey, we got this partnership, and everyone is kind of responsible for a certain percentage of, the business expenses and revenues and the like. But it also, in essence, kind of gives you a limited protection as well, because with the limited partnership, it kind of has some of the benefit of the limited liability company.
Okay.
Right. But like I stated before, with that all gets wiped away when you personally guarantee things. So with limited liability partnerships and also limited liability companies, when you have additional people, more times than not, it's a good idea to have an operational agreement. What that does is outline what everybody is supposed to be doing. There's no question about the roles later on when you have a solid operational agreement. And it's good to have it, so that in the event that anyone forgets about what they're supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
You can tell them, please reference the operational agreement, and you will see what your daily, what your tasked with in this partnership.
And does that
Um,
sort of in a court of law, if that should ever be a problem, this operating agreement now says you were supposed to do that?
yeah, but see, what tends to happen is that it helps in the court of law from the standpoint of if the company gets sued, it doesn't really come into play there because all the partners are on the hook for it. Now, after the lawsuit settles and you're trying to recoup, let's say for example the lawsuit happens, you guys got to pay $100,000, and I paid $100,000, and you and I, Stephanie, we're in business. I paid $100,000. Now I got to sue you to get $50,000.
Right.
After I've paid, the lawsuit to get it off our plate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now I'm going to sue you for the contributory portion of it that you owe me. So now the operation agreement kind of comes in play because it tells the judge like, hey, Stephanie, he paid the $100,000. Now he's suing you for 50, and based on the operation agreement, you got to pay up half.
Okay. And the S corp is really just the tool to demonstrate the differences of the partnership.
Right, to the IRS. Yeah.
Okay.
They're just telling the IRS, hey, this is what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
this is the structure.
what is your theory on partnerships? And I'll ask you why. I'll tell you why I'm asking that. I remember years ago, I had a hairstylist who went into a partnership. Didn't do all that. Didn't do the operational agreement. They were just so highly excited about all the being partners. And it became a problem because there was sort of an expectation that they were going to be splitting everything down the middle, and that didn't happen at all. So she's now very leery of the whole partnership dynamic. If you were looking at a partnership, what should you be looking at in a partner? And what's your opinion on partnership?
Well, I've always been told, initially when you guys put together a partnership, I've always been told, do business as enemy, go out and drink as friends.
That might be right. You might be right, actually, because after I heard her story, I was like,
no. Because what you're going to realize is once you sit down with someone, you guys are talking about what the partnership needs to look like, and signing contracts and paperwork, it gets real. Mm-hmm. Things get in perspective real quick because all the fun and joy of doing the partnership has been set aside. Now it's time to talk about the nuts and bolts and who's daily tasked with what, right. And what the outcomes will be if these things don't happen.
Right.
So initially, that's the conversation that need to get had.
Let me ask about also within the operating agreement, are there also specifics about protections with regards to the product? And I'll give you an example. I've spoken to someone who had was doing some kind of food product. I want to say it was pies, with their aunt under a quote unquote partnership. Of course, the aunt took the recipes, went off on her own because she didn't expect her aunt would do this. Went off on her own and started selling the same pies using the same ingredients, the same recipes, and it caused definitely dissension in the family. But what about the business? Can an operating agreement be as specific as these ingredients are specific to this pie specific to this business?
Well, I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to give you a complete answer to that question in a couple of parts.
Okay.
So number one, if there are any recipes, they should have trademarked the recipes if possible. Mm-hmm. Okay, if possible. If they were able to acquire a trademark on the recipes, patent, not trademark, patent. Okay. Not trademark, I'm sorry. If they were able to receive a patent on the recipe, that allows for it to be packaged up as, a trade secret, intellectual property in a sense. So to whoever name is on the paperwork. Okay. Because if you go to court, the judge goes, if you go to court, the judge will say, is there a patent? Yes. Okay. Whose name on the patent? Okay. It's Barbara. Cool. Mm-hmm. That's one part. Now, the other part is let's look at Barbara assigning ownership of the recipe to the business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's look at the operation agreement and what it says in regards to trade secrets and who owns this patent and how it can be used in the event that the business is ours.
Wow. Okay.
So
And
that's
also
why the
agreement.
that's why operation agreement, a solid one, a good one. But it's also understanding the entire business from a structure standpoint. You guys have a recipe. Can we get a patent? Yes, no, and then we all tie it together.
Wow, I mean, but you know, the intellectual property has become such an important thing right now. And if you are looking at going into a partnership, that needs to be really considered. You know, who owns what, and if you break free, how much of it you can take somewhere else. The challenge is, you know, a lot of these things are done in a kitchen between family and friends, and you don't think that far down the line.
As enemies, drink as friends.
Business is different from doing stuff with family. They're not.
They say blood and money don't mix.
Exactly. And you shouldn't take it personally. This is business. This is people's livelihoods. They put everything into this. So
very true.
You know, if somebody asks you for an operating agreement, it shouldn't be personal. It's not. This is business.
But it needs to be explained in a way that it protects everyone. It puts us all on the same page. You want that protection, right? Yes. Okay. You don't want to do work and feel like you can get screwed over without any recourse, right? Yeah, I feel the same way. So it works. It helps all of us.
All the parties involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so we talked about the legally amend business and corporation structure.
So I want to kind of talk about corporations, because you have a lot of folks that have started a business and automatically register themselves as a corporation, never understanding that that's 9 times out of 10 the wrong filing initially, right? Mm-hmm. Every corporation in America started out as a small business, and it grew and transitioned into the corporations that you see today. Mm-hmm. So there are some things that folks find out after they accidentally register for a corporation at the state level and federal level. Like, you need management minutes. Mm-hmm. You need there's stock meetings, and you'll start getting all this weird paperwork from the state if you are a small business and you register as a corporation, and then penalties and stuff like that start rolling in. And if you're making any money, the IRS will say, hey, you never sent us our tax money on the revenues, right? And then you never sent us the money on the income, right? Yeah. So you got that double taxation issue. And a lot of folks initially starting out want to appear to be big and prestigious and put it in the name of their business, never knowing the repercussions. So
then who should you consult about that? You should really, with that in mind, it really is a good idea for you to go to a lawyer to really have those candid conversations. It's worth it to make that investment. Have those conversations about where you are today and where you want to be in the future.
Right. Okay. I won't say the first thought I had. Okay, so I will rephrase my first thought and say most lawyers can tell you the law, right? Mm-hmm. But most lawyers don't understand business. Mm-hmm. Like, most accountants can do accounting work and tell you that your books are balanced, but most accountants don't understand finance.
So who's the person?
Give me a second.
Okay.
That has been a part of the alarm. I have a fire alarm going on. Give me a second. Been a part of the alarm.
You want to go?
Atención a todos los residentes. Atención a todos los residentes. Esta ha sido una falsa alarma. Okay, I wanted to have your attention, please. They got another announcement. Hold on. There's been a fire reported in the...
That's not cool.
Okay, so it stopped. No, it's fine. They cut it off. It was a false alarm.
Okay.
Sorry. So What I was saying was most accountants can tell you that your books are balanced and they can do the accounting, but they don't understand finance.
Okay.
So when you talk to them about financial strategies and analysis and operations and arbitrage, they really can't really talk to you about that kind of stuff. You have some that can, but they're rare. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So like I say, you have a lot of lawyers because I have a lot of clients that have gone to lawyers and lawyers have not understanding the business and the entire operation has given the client what they ask for,
but not giving them advice as to what.
But they don't know. But the lawyer doesn't. The lawyer. My job is to do lawyer stuff, to do legal things, not to actually delve into the business and understand the business and based on that understanding, do the structure. You know.
Well,
so
then who's that? Is that you? Someone
yeah, I've done it. I've had to undo a lot of things that lawyers have done, and it's not a knock against the lawyer. It's just the lawyer. The client didn't understand what they were doing. They went to the lawyer and told the lawyer that they needed a specific thing, and the lawyer did their job by doing what the client said. Or more times than not, clients are going LegalZoom and do some stuff on LegalZoom, and they don't even have a clue as to what they really need because they're doing this thing on LegalZoom based on their understanding of what they need. Right. And on LegalZoom side, it's like, hey, you plug this information in, you say you want to do this and you pay us our fee. And we provided you the service that you say you wanted. And it's not our job to understand your business and how it needs to be structured. That's not our job, right? You logged on to LegalZoom and did this on your own, right? You came to my office and you told me you understood that you needed, to file as a corporation. So
I filed you as a corporation.
I filed you as a corporation because that's what you said. So like I said, it's not a slight against lawyers. It's just that, it's they don't have a holistic view of the business. So they do what the clients want them to do.
And may I say, I'm guilty of this. Every small business owner, I think sometimes if you're trying to do some things that you think are going to be cheaper on the front end, it will end up costing you in the back end. You will lose money in this process. It's a learning process. You will lose money, but it's okay for you to kind of backtrack and say, maybe this isn't the route I should be going, and I might need to seek someone who knows what they're doing to help me get on the right path,
Right. Very true.
Always the easiest coming to Jesus moment you can have with yourself, but you do have to do it every now and then.
Very true.
So that's, lessons learned. So,
okay.
And you would call people like Jermaine to get those answers.
Very true.
New marketplace entry and market share growth.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about we talked about folks gaining market share. So I'll go over this rather quickly. So when you think about new market entry and market share growth, we're talking about either you're going to, do new product development. You're going to do R&D, which is going to be super costly, depending on who you are. If you're the Microsofts, IBM of the world, you got the money, you got the talent, you can do it, right? But we're talking about small business owners that don't have the talent and money that IBM and Microsoft and these big corporations have. So one way to do it may be to, do an acquisition, right? So let's say, for example, you have a bakery. The kitchen is small. They're like, hey, we need more space to go after more market share. We got a bunch of orders that we need to get out, right? So in that instance, the bakery may say, hey, let's go buy a commercial kitchen. Right. To cook our goods out of. And at the same time, we can, rent out, the commercial kitchen to other folks to generate revenue. Okay. But in an effort to, and so that allows for us to get into a new marketplace, right? With the commercial kitchen, but it also allows for us to, at the same time, have market share growth because now we can bake more product because we own our own commercial kitchen, right? Or another thing, merger of equals or mergers, because it's never really a merger of equals. It's usually somebody bought somebody, and they merge together. So when we think about that, we think about SunTrust and BB&T.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Market share growth. You have these two banks, they're regional banks, super regional banks, and you merge them together to get what they call themselves now, the Truist banks, right? So once that merger happened, that new bank has grown in market share and potentially have entered new markets where BB&T or SunTrust probably previously wasn't dependent on who had a branch there and who didn't have a branch there in regards to like market share. BB&T might have had some banks in Texas. SunTrust probably didn't have banks in Texas. Now when they do the merger, guess what? Now Truist Bank, the new brand, is in Texas, right?
Right.
Let's say Tennessee. SunTrust may have had some branches in Tennessee. BB&T didn't. When you do the merger, the new branch, the new name, Truist, now Truist, the new bank, has a presence in Tennessee. So in both instances, you have a growth in market share and new market entry.
Now, with those companies you were referring to, they're all larger companies, so they definitely have the ability to do the research. Small business owner who's trying to scale, what should they be looking at when they are saying to themselves, you're looking at, some kind of acquisition or merger? Is it as simple as across the street, there's a restaurant that looks just like mine? What are some of those, moments where after you've looked at the finances, I'm ready to move on. Now, what are some of the checklist points I'm supposed to think about as I'm thinking about?
So sometimes it's more so of things that you use frequently. Like I said, it may be the bakery saying, hey, our kitchen is small, so we can only do so many things. We pay, $100,000 a year to the ABCD commercial kitchen to use their space, right? So it boils down to how much cost savings would it be if we just bought ABC commercial kitchen? What kind of savings would that give us? Okay, it gives us a significant savings. So let's go acquire ABCD commercial kitchen.
Okay.
See, so it's more so a lot of mergers happen out of need to cut costs on services that's frequently getting used.
Gotcha.
Right. Other is market share. It's like, hey, this is our competitor. Let's buy them to get market share and take them out.
Okay. And then, of course, the most important part, funding.
Money. Yes. Money.
Oh, you said it earlier. It all comes down to the money.
Right. So
private equity and venture capitalists. If you could explain the difference, and then, again, what should we be thinking through as we go through these?
So let's say, so just to put it in simplistic terms, so we think about private equity. It's let's say your company, you got the television company. You're like, hey, I need to, I want to buy this other company, but I don't have the money. And I'll say, okay, Stephanie, I'll put together a private equity group. We'll put together, $100,000. Well, let's say we'll put together, $1.5 million in exchange for me putting together the $1.5 million. If we help you buy this new, this other company, we need to get, 60% or, 50% stock in the new company, right? So the private equities, I got a bunch of folks, we got together, we came up with the 1.5 million, we gave it to you to help buy this other company that was probably in distress or something like that. And as a result of that, we're now partners with you at 50, 60% into this new business this new portfolio of business that you acquired, right? So when you think about venture capitalists is like, hey, same scenario. It's like, hey, okay, Stephanie, I'm going to, put some money into your business, right? For potentially some ownership, but really I'm trying to cash out, trying to get your business to a certain point, and either take some stock out of your business or, we're trying to get your business to a certain point to sell it to make money.
That's venture capitalists.
Yeah, I mean, most businesses have an exit strategy. Like, you're not trying to do whatever it is you're trying to do forever. That's nonsense.
Wow.
I mean, you think about your business. If you could get enough capital infused in your business to the point to where Viacom calls you one day and say, "Hey, Stephanie, I want to give you $1.2 billion for your business," you're gonna say no?
Nope. I'm going to say yes to that.
Yeah, that's what happened with Bob Johnson and BET.
But Viacom is trying to be there forever.
Right, but Viacom is a living, breathing business. It's not a small business. Remember, Bob Johnson started BET,
Yes, yeah, and I knew Viacom.
and Viacom purchased it. He wasn't trying to, be the face and of BET forever.
Okay.
Right. You see, so Viacom purchased it because it's a conglomerate.
I'm trying to see. I hear something that sounds like breathing, but
Yeah.
do you hear that?
Yes.
I was like,
One
where
second.
it's coming from? I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody. Not sure where that's coming
Keisha.
from. Okay. I'm looking at all. Anyway, so okay, that makes a good point. That makes a good point about the
Sorry
vision.
about that. Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. That you are trying to, at some point, basically be bought out by someone. So
right, your exit strategy. Every business has an exit strategy. So the idea is to get the business to a certain multiple.
Okay.
And evaluation, and then sell the business or walk away from the business.
So what do you look for if you're talking to a client who's now come to you and said, I want to scale by looking at this private equity opportunity or this venture capitalist opportunity? What are you looking at for that business? In addition to, the revenues that they've demonstrated that they can generate revenue, that kind of thing. What are some of the other things you would take under consideration?
I mean, you definitely look at it, goes back to the financial control mechanism. You could definitely go back to that to see how healthy the company is, to see where the revenue is coming from. Because sometimes you have a company that's looking, you have a company that's looking to sell. And when you look at their financials, their customer concentration, right? Which means that there's one customer that accounts for more than 25% of the revenue. So it's like, really, you have a business and you're making revenue, but it's not healthy because it's all coming from one client,
right,
or two clients.
Yes.
You see? So from that standpoint, there's no diversity in your revenue. So they'll look at that. They'll look at, the employment contracts of your employees. They'll look at the conditions of the marketplace, where the market is going. And based on those things, they'll make you an offer. If your business is not structured properly and have the right mechanisms in place in regards to your employee agreements and pending lawsuits or discrimination claims, those things, if that stuff is present, they're going to buy you for the cheap. If you suffer from customer concentration, they're looking to buy you for the cheap.
Okay.
So it's all of those things.
Okay. So that's definitely something a small business owner should take into consideration prior to even going down that route.
Yeah, but these are all things that, if properly planned and monitored over the course of developing the business over years, won't be an issue.
Right. Okay.
These are all things that won't be an issue.
Okay. Well, okay. Then that is the last point, I believe, of our discussion point of scaling.
Right.
So how many people out there are ready to scale to become millionaires tomorrow?
Yes.
You were going to say something?
No, I was going to tell folks, hey, definitely, I am willing to, with my email address at jjones@birdhamgroup.com. If you have any business questions, I am willing to answer and help you resolve one business question. My website is www.birdhamgroup.com. I can be reached at jjones@birdhamgroup.com.
Yes, thank you for sharing that information. And most importantly, thank you for coming on the show. I think you've definitely shared some information that many of us have wanted to get, but didn't really know where to go to get that advice, that type of thing. So I really do appreciate it. I hope you'll come back to the show again and stay a friend of the show. I know I'll be in contact with you, I'm sure. And thank you so much. And I do encourage everyone, please reach out to Jermaine. He's a wealth of information. You'll definitely learn a lot. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, that was our show, the last of our three-part series that looked at idea, inception, innovation. Thank you so much for joining us for that. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. As you can see, I was delving in trying to get some of my questions answered as well. So we won't have a show next week, but tune in today at 5 o'clock on Clubhouse. I am going to start what I hope will be accountability groups, people that can support one another, mastermind, help one another in this small business space. A lot of times we're working in silos, and if we just talk to other business owners, it might be a wealth of information for us. We will be launching our landing page, Talking Business, Just Talking Business, where you can go back and look at all of our videos as a learning tool. Definitely our entrepreneurs have been, have been able to share some of their personal experiences and their expertise and knowledge in order to help you as a small business owner and maybe a startup business. So that's going to be a great source as well. And that will be in both audio and video. So stay tuned. We will be back again in the next couple of weeks with more guests. Thank you and have a great day.